Your best customers are the customers that you already have, your current audience. They're your best and most loyal and advocates of your brand. So how do you continuously communicate with them? But also, how do you then incentivize them to recruit new customers? Because we all know recruiting new customers is a lot more expensive. But if you still have the ability to communicate and retain your existing customer base in this current climate, and you haven't lost those customers, you're not in a bad place, to be honest.
Welcome to the Hospitality Maverick podcast with me, Michael Tingsager. We at Hospitality Mavericks are here to inspire leaders to create hot-centered and profitable businesses from the inside out, the kind that both employees and customers love and support. In this episode, I talk with Dhilon Solanki, UK and EMEA Director of Sprout, which is a CRM marketing platform giving insights for hospitality operators to improve their customer experience. Dhilon talks about their learnings from observing their clients during the pandemic and how they've been communicating effectively with their customers. The ones that have been in regular contact with their customers have seen better engagement and sales after the first lockdown ended. We discussed the power of email marketing and what you can achieve by utilizing your CRM database to tell your unique story. Dhilon says he's been so surprised to see the amount of passion and care operators have shown during the pandemic, how they have stepped up and gone beyond what is expected, helping feeding NHS, frontline employees, children in need, even when their businesses was at the brink of bankruptcy. We discussed the rapid development in digital transformation that's happening right now across the industry and the importance of striking the balance between tech and human interaction right. We reflect on how you keep yourself in the right mindset and boost your mental health as you go through the winter months. But before you tune in, why not sign up to our Maverick community newsletter and get great insights and leadership tools at hospitalitymavericks.com. We'll need to go through this together, so happy to talk to you. So please book a chat with me on hospitalitymavericks.com. Don't worry, if you didn't get all of this, there will be links in the show notes. So grab headphones, notebook, and enjoy. Today is a couple of days since we had the announcement from the Prime Minister that we're going to have a lockdown in this week on Thursday, and we are a couple of days away from that. And for this episode, I actually have a guest that will be very relevant to talk with, not only because we have this situation, but in general, because we're going to have a period now of time where we are not in face-to-face connection with our guests in hospitality. And Dhilon and I had a conversation some time ago, and actually at this point we didn't know there would be a lockdown here. But Dhilon works with a company called Sprout that actually helps you with checking in your guests and make sure that you follow the COVID regulation, but also he makes sure you're connected with them when they're not in your space. So Dhilon, welcome to the podcast, and please tell the audience a bit more about what your background is, and also what Sprout is all about.
Sure. Well, thanks very much, Mike, for having me on the podcast. It's appreciated. So my name is Dhilon Solanki. Always been in hospitality for the last 15 or 20 years, funnily enough, from ranging from nightclubs to restaurants, bars, from a marketing and an operational background. And the company that I work for now, that we've almost launched a new CRM marketing platform in the UK, is called Sprout Send. So originally an Australian-based business who've been operating for the last 10 years, had tapped out and almost gained market share of the Australian market and wanted to launch their new Sprout platform in other territories and other countries. So they felt the UK, certainly Europe and UK were a prime target for them, especially because of the fact that from a cultural perspective and a language perspective, there's great alignment, but also in the last 5 or 6 years, the hospitality industry has been extremely buoyant. Maybe, or perhaps probably not in the last 6 or 7 months, but it's been extremely buoyant. So they felt the UK was a good fit to launch their new product and their platform. So I joined the business and launched it here in the UK in June of 2019, and we've had some great traction to date. So essentially, in a nutshell, how the platform works is it gives the ability for brands and operators to aggregate your data. So if you're a venue, you'll have data coming from multiple different channels, from your website, your Wi-Fi provider, your reservation platform, your loyalty app, ticketing, and any other third-party platform that you might have data sitting in that you're collecting from your audience and your consumers. That data essentially creates a single view of a customer. It understands their likes, their dislikes, their interests, their buyer behavior, their recency, their frequency of visits, which then allows you, the second part of the platform, to manage and structure and segment that data. And once you've got that in a data in a place where you then want to start to communicate with that, the platform then allows you to leverage the different communications tools, whether it be email, SMS, automations, triggers, and a whole load of other functionality as well, to ensure that you're targeting the right consumer, your right audience in a one-to-one relationship and conversation at the right time. And over the last 12 months, we've managed to do that for a host of different types of businesses across the hospitality sector, from late night venues, restaurant chains, bars, hotels, and leisure venues. And in March, obviously, COVID happened, and we see ourselves in a pandemic, which is quite crucial and almost make or break, really, I think, for the hospitality industry, where they've gone through a huge amount of stress, and it's been extremely tough for the operators, but also for suppliers as well.
What I think is really interesting with, one thing is that you help with some compliance stuff around COVID, but I think what's really interesting, because I'm a big believer in that storytelling and telling the story about your business to the consumer are one of the key skills you need to have as a hospitality business going forward. Something we always have been quite good at when we had way back when we started thinking about the mom and pop restaurant. There was always a story behind it. It was always about coming down to see the owners, and that's going to become very critical, that people, because consumers are going to be more savvy than ever. They still want to spend money, but they want to spend it on things they know, they like, they trust, and also where they feel a deeper connection. So I guess that ability to communicate and understand your customers inside out, needs and wants, makes it easier to tell that, do the storytelling in the right way, and then use the email platform as well. I don't know if that's something you guys have seen yet as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I think when we went into lockdown in March and April of this year, it was paramount that operators still continue to communicate with their customers. And we, in fact, encouraged our customers to maximize the value within the platform, to communicate to their audience. And we did a small test, and where we saw operators who did not communicate with their audience over the 3 or 4 month period during lockdown, the engagement was slightly less post-COVID when they sent out campaigns, versus operators who were continuously communicating with their audience over that 3 or 4 month period. And I think it was quite crucial. We almost encouraged all our operators and our customers to continuously communicate, not just to their customers, but also using the platform to communicate to their staff who are on furlough as well, which was obviously just as important. But for us, it was really crucial that brands still talk to the consumer in the right way. And regardless of whether they were open or closed, or they decided to pivot, whether it be by a delivery model or taken on a voucher platform, it was still continuously ensuring that that brand was top of mind for that audience, for that customer. And there were some amazing initiatives that brands were taking on, whether it be live streamings of chefs making recipes, or sending out recipes for some of their signature dishes, cocktail making classes, which were streamed online, Spotify list. It was amazing and really creative in terms of what some of the brands were showcasing and talking to their audience. And what we found was certainly those brands were continuously communicating on the back end of lockdown, or certainly when we came out of it in August, July and August. The response and engagement level was a lot higher than brands not communicating to their audience whatsoever. And what we try to do is support our consumers, because yes, we have a platform, and it has to have the ability to communicate to your audience in the right way. But where our value comes in is, having been ex-operators and marketers within the hospitality industry, we can add value in terms of developing their comms and digital strategy to help them through that customer journey almost. And essentially, where you have your bricks and mortar customer journey, we've had to help venues and brands transfer that online. So your web, how they're engaging with consumers, essentially from your web online shopfront, became a lot more important. But also, in line with that, the content that's being pushed out, whether it be via their audience, their database, but also their social media channels and any other communication channels that they use as an integrated approach. So for us, it was really, really important. And we made an initial decision right at the very beginning that we're all in this together. We've all come in this together. So we all want to make sure that we come out of it together If we don't help our operators and our customers, in time of need, they won't be around in 6 months, and essentially we won't be around, or suppliers won't be around either. So we took the view that we're in this together. We want to work together. We want to make sure that whether it's commercially we help them or helping them develop their comms and digital strategy during lockdown and post-lockdown was extremely important for us. And we always made sure that our customers were at the forefront of everything that we did.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting with what you can do with a simple newsletter, and I think often has been often very product focus in hospitality, but there's so much else you can tell in that newsletter. And one of my favorite books I read around, because at some point I needed to myself to find out in my businesses, how do we actually utilize this CRM database we have with people signed up for things, because they're just lying there. We're not really communicate with them. And I read a book at that point. I don't know if you know it. It's called Do Open by David Hyatt. And he transformed his businesses through newsletters, because they have this great businesses out in Wales that makes jeans, and nobody really knew about the story that they actually bought it out in administration from a Marks and Spencer's factory and saved jobs locally, and they have the best quality. They're maybe not the cheapest, but they have the best quality, and they produce on demand in a way. So there's many things in that story, and when he started communicating that, sales went mentally within a very short period, because people got a story. And of course he was good at writing. I'm not saying every writer should be a copywriter now, but it's something that can be learned, and it's so powerful, that connection you have. Because I don't know if this is true, I think I read somewhere, and maybe that's better than me, that actually email is still the most powerful communication tool above social media when it comes to really get core customers' attention.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a balance really as well, because it's also dependent on the audience that you're communicating to and how they want to be communicated in the right way, and also at the right time as well. And something that we have within our platform has the ability to test different types of content, different timings, to see what likely their audience is going to engage with. But you made a good point there, Michael. Actually, one of the most important lessons I learned being a marketer in hospitality is that your best customers are the customers that you already have, your current audience. They're your best and most loyal and advocates of your brand. So how do you continuously communicate with them, but also how do you then incentivize them to recruit new customers? Because we all know recruiting new customers is a lot more expensive. But if you still have the ability to communicate and retain your existing customer base in this current climate, and you haven't lost those customers, you're not in a bad place, to be honest. And it's similar to us as a business. We've been able to retain luckily enough, 100% of our customers who are using and continuously are using our platform. But we've also managed to gain some customers along the way as well during this period. So I think it's really important that you harness your existing database and you protect your consumers, but continuously communicate with them in the right way. And I'm not saying necessarily you start blanketing, communicating with them. It's very much based on the behavior and the data you already have about them. When we've aggregated that data, whether it be via Wi-Fi or their reservation platforms, the last time they'd actually visited your restaurant, how many times they visited your venue. So then you can start to determine who your advocates are of your brand, who are your loyal customers, who are your lapsed customers, for example. And then you start to segment your audience in a way that who you want to communicate to more aggressively, and who you want to maybe communicate and just ensure that you're top of mind. So when venues do come out of lockdown, and certainly, hopefully in December when we do come out of I hope that venues start, we all come out of a lockdown in the first week in December. They're the people that they're going to turn to. It's the brands who continuously communicated with them and being almost on their side. Like we have to be on our customers' side and help them. They also need to be on their customers' side to help them through this process as well with engaged content, which is going to be relevant to them. So I think it's extremely important that you're protecting your existing database. Essentially, it's your digital asset of the business, and the more you protect that, I think the more beneficial and the more it will pay dividends in the long run for the business.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting again that that it's a bit like planting seeds when you're utilizing your database. It's not like something that's gonna convert straight away, but it's a bit like seed. Is that how do you keep your best customers, and how do you know how they are changing as well? during this period. I guess as well, that's so critical right now that we're all changing as individuals, and way we do business, how we live our life, and everything is changing. And having an understanding where your core audience are moving, I guess that's extremely important compared to, product experience, what they expect, so on.
Absolutely. And I think, consumers' tastes and behaviors, constantly change. I think certainly it changes a lot more based on different segments. So when you look at the millennials, for example, they're a lot more fickle. They're not as brand loyal as potentially our generation. Because I'm not saying that we're old, but I think, from generation to generation, the behavior of people does change, and the younger generation, they're probably not as loyal as potentially we were back in the day. But I think what's also most important is, well, where businesses have had to change, as consumers changes their behaviour, businesses have also had to change and pivot, for example, as well. And we've just seen the number of brands who have been able to adapt to a delivery only model or click and collect model. It's been amazing how quickly operators have been able to change, and we also as a businesses as well has had to look at us and how we can help help business, but also look to adapt. And we've looked at other sectors within hospitality, so potentially leisure venues that we've not really had a huge amount of coverage in. We've been able to get some good coverage within the leisure and the hotel industry. Also working with DJs and the event space, which has worked quite well for us as well. But also looking at our current feature set and functionality to see how we can use the time wisely to adapt and evolve going into the future as well. So I think it's people's changes, people's behaviour does change. I think suppliers and brands at the same time need to also adapt as well. And I think we're in a sector where hospitality is extremely resilient. They're survivors. We're survivors. I've not seen any other sector and industry who's got the heart and passion like the hospitality industry has. And I think it's the passion that you can't manufacture that. You either have that or you don't in this industry. It's not the cash. It's not the money that drives people. I think almost that becomes a byproduct. And yes, everyone needs to have a comfortable living and needs to eat, but it's the passion that drives these operators and people who work within this industry, constantly, working hard 7 days a week. It's not a 9 to 5. It's almost a lifestyle for hospitality businesses. And even in the last 2 or 3 weeks, as we've seen, hospitality's backs are up against the wall with the rent, the rates, labour, staff being on furlough. Then we've got COVID to contend with. And even then, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, hospitality find a way to feed underprivileged kids and school children. It's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's amazing to see. I don't think there's any other industry that caters or has the ability to facilitate, that type of heart. You don't get, huge amount in any other industry, and it's in abundance. Even though they're in that predicament and their businesses may be on the brink of collapse, they're still there to help people, because the hospitality industry is a people-based business. It's all working together. And that's why we made the decision from the beginning. Our customers are our friends. We want to work together. We want them to survive and look after their customers in the right way and communicate with them in the right way. So I think that's taught us a lot, certainly as a business. And the biggest learning we've had as a business is how resilient and how protective the business is. People working in the industry, it's almost like family. Even when you look at the ground up with the servers, bartenders, they've developed almost a second family. So you can imagine what they're going through at the moment. So if there's any little inch that we can help businesses, and I'll come in to talk to you about how we help businesses with our free track and trace app, we'll certainly help. And the other kind of learning I'll probably discuss, I'm sure we'll discuss in depth about, is the value of data and harnessing and protecting their existing or the brand audience to communicate in the right way during this period.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting, as you said. That was a very good example about feeding school kids. And I don't know if you've seen in the news today, Burger King went out and called upon public to support McDonald's. This is
Yeah,
like unheard, and they say not just McDonald's, but any restaurant, business, or chain that you can support in any kind of way through this will have a massive impact on keeping the industry moving forward. And that was a bit of a surprise to me. I was like, okay, well that really shows that the industry is like coming together, and you can say it's a marketing stunt. And I actually don't think it comes from that, because that's a dangerous play to do if you're playing it as a marketing stunt. I don't think that's what they do. I think they genuinely, because I know the CEO of Burger King in the UK has been quite active as well in this campaign of trying to keep the industry together in a way. But it's so interesting to see these changes of dynamic that would never happen before in the industry. And it shows when you take off all the games and politics and things like that. It's just like raw people that's in there that care about each other.
Absolutely. It's about people wanting to do well, wanting to give people experiences, working together, as a family, and the number of collaborations and partnerships that we've seen has been phenomenal, to be honest. Even brands, brands versus brands, for example. One of our customers, Shake Shack, have teamed up recently with Patty and Bun. Essentially, you could say they're still in the same sector as such, in terms of they sell burgers, so almost competitive with each other, but they've come together to create a collaboration for in-home dining kits. So I think we'll see a lot more of that going into the future as well. But yeah, the number of partnerships, collaborations, and even us as a business working with a number of other SaaS platforms, whether it be gifting or feedback or loyalty, it's been amazing, to be honest with you, in terms of the camaraderie and people working together towards the same goal, essentially, because we all want to survive. We want the industry to survive. And one thing, yes, certainly that it has taught me is the resilience, and we are survivors. Don't get me wrong, absolutely there will be some casualties, unfortunately, during this period. And we've already seen quite a number of casualties over the last 6 months, and there'll probably be more to come. Certainly, if not by the end of the year, by the first quarter of next year, which is heartbreaking when you think about it in terms of the time and effort and investment and sweat, blood, and tears that operators have gone into. But it's just as a business, for our point of view, just making sure that we're there we're there for the operators, and we're there for their brands and their customers every step of the way, in any way that we can help. Absolutely, why wouldn't we? We're all in this together.
I think it was interesting, learning you said as well that around the operators, how have you have learned this thing? You mentioned the thing with heart. Is there any other things like in the pandemic where you think like, wow, I would have never seen that coming? Is there other things where you think there's like really worth touching on here?
Yeah, of course. I think I always knew, and we always knew, and I think most people in the industry knew, that technology was going to grow, and the importance of data was going to grow. But I think almost because of this pandemic, it's probably fast forwarded everything 3 or 4 years, and the technology, or the rising technology in hospitality, has grown exponentially. It's huge. Who would have thought QR codes would have come back in action, come back but unbelievable. I think the fact that technology in hospitality is become a lot more prominent, become a lot more important. I think the rise in e-commerce, I think the rise in brands and venues now trying to pivot and sell their products and merchandise online is grown, and will continue to grow. But there's been phenomenal examples, with even the likes of Pret a Manger, for example, have decided to create their subscription model as well. So there's lots of creative ways that I think brands and venues have had to change path slightly. And I always like to say, one of my favorite phrases, stay in your lane. Absolutely stay in your lane in terms of the values and the culture and what you stand for. But at the same time, a business still needs to generate cash to survive. So still, understand your principles, your core values as a business, and what you stand for, and what you've been achieving in terms of the customer journey when venues, or when customers have been coming in and out of your venue. But then how do you then translate that from an online perspective? And I've seen lots of that happen from various different brands. I think the fact that, the likes of Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Just Eat, I think have capitalized, on the market in terms of delivery, which is great in one way because it gives or appeases the need for customers wanting to have their favorite brand in home. However, I know and fully aware, and I'm sure you'll be fully aware, Michael, the margins that they take, is slightly criminal, really, certainly in this time of need. Understand they need to be a profit-making business, but at the same time, venues need a helping hand, and I think that's that certainly I think will continue to grow as well. But I think essentially in terms of the rise of different concepts, I think technology has become huge. I think the aggregation of data, so the ability for brands now wanting to aggregate their data from all the different channels to ability to communicate to the right customer at the right time has been fast forwarded a lot more because they want that engagement, they want that customer and that life cycle of that customer to be extended as long as possible, but hitting them with the right touch points. I think the guest experience, in terms of, I think when I was at Itsu or Starbucks, I think last week, where when you purchase your coffee, all the other condiments are kept behind back of house now, not at the forefront, but again, trying to reduce the amount of risk or spread of risk of germs or anything like that whatsoever. So I think operators are going to have to be mindful, not from an operational perspective, but also from a marketing perspective, in terms of how they look to communicate slightly differently in this environment, I think.
How do you see technology's role in all this? Some people talked about technology is going to transform the industry, or do you see it more like a support mechanism? Because we talked a lot about before that hospitality is a people business.
Yes, I would like to see it as in my opinion, I'd love to see it as a support mechanism as opposed to a complete overhaul of how customers should be facilitated, or in terms of customer journey in the venue. Now, we all missed the human element, I think, all working from home over the last 4 or 5 months. And I can imagine when customers and myself go to restaurants, yes, the order at table phenomenon is grown, and the number of operators that have launched their table app, pay table app over the last 5 years, it's grown massively. And I understand that and the reasoning for that as well. However, I wouldn't like to see the human element of servers, taking orders and having that relationship, because hospitality is based on relationship. That's why we work within this industry, and people need human contact. And I'd be extremely sad if that got taken away completely. I certainly see a role for technology from a communications perspective, from almost before a consumer or a customer goes into a venue, they look online, they look at the reviews, they want to book a table. That should all be seamless. But then how did it get communicated to prior and after the customer journey is extremely important as well. But then when you're in your venue, how are you communicated to? How are you talked to? What is the process? Is it through the pay at table app? Is it through having to download through the QR code? What are those different touch points that consumers experiencing? And the more touch points, great, because it's building that relationship. But if it's not human interaction, I think customers will start to certainly wane off a little bit. I think it's a bit of a balance, really. You need technology, and technology will continue to grow, but I think the human element is extremely important. And when we've got other platforms that are coming into place, which also helps brands drive incremental cash, such as the gifting or pay it forward or the vouchers, all great initiatives and absolutely should be used. But I think the in restaurant or in venue experience, to have that balance of human interaction will be extremely important. I think the other part of that as well, technology works on data. So it's important that if consumers use data to facilitate their customer journey, or brands use technology to facilitate their customer's journey, it's extremely important that with that data, they then communicate and use that in the right way going forward as well, and not let that rest. It's extremely important to continue that customer journey and that conversation, whether it be by a bi-monthly or monthly communication, or if it's somebody's birthday, or if they haven't been in for the last 3 months, let's send that a we miss you message. Or if somebody has been coming in quite consistently over the last 4 or 5 weeks, we want to reward them for their loyalty. So I think it'll be really important that pre, during and post, technology will always play a part in the industry, but I just hope that we don't lose that human interaction, because I think it's all about people, and us as businesses as well, working from home. It's great to have Zoom calls and Microsoft Team meeting calls. Absolutely, there's no issue with that. But I think people will be literally itching to have face-to-face conversations. And I've had a number of face-to-face conversations in the last 4 or 5 weeks, and people have craved that. And I think that's something that certainly post-lockdown people will want to have a lot more of.
Yeah, and I think that's what I've heard from many people as well. That's like the worst thing about this, because besides this winter with the second lockdown and we have to close down, it's the for the average person, it's the ability to go out and interact in a way. And I think also people have become a bit Zoom fatigue. I know for myself, I try to keep it Zoom down to a minimum every day, because it just takes a different level of energy out of you. Then you don't get anything back. That's probably the best way I can say it.
Correct. Yeah, it's it's tough, and I think I mentioned to you when I was on a previous phone call that the one thing that I always do every morning, I'll be up at 6 in the morning and I'll go for a walk for an hour just to set myself straight in terms of what the plan is for the day ahead and for the next few days as well, just to kind of clear the head, which it certainly helped with me and the business. It also gives me the opportunity to catch up with the rest of the team who are based out in Australia and some of the team here in the UK as well. So I think it's extremely important also from a mental health position as well, where we've seen a lot more of that come into play in the last 4 or 5 months and become huge amount of media attention, really, purely and when you think about staff who may have been on furlough or who may be made redundant, they're going through a lot, they're going through a huge amount, so it's to help brands and show some empathy and sympathy that what they're going through. We're all kind of in the same boat. We're all going through a similar process, some more drastic than others, but we're all in the same boat where we've not got that human interaction, and that's probably one of the reasons why I'll put almost like I like to call non-negotiables in my day-to-day working life by getting up at 6 in the morning and go for an hour's work just to make sure that what I've got to do for the day is all planned out. So it gives you some sort of structure and gives you some sort of routine. And I think that's one of the biggest disadvantages of working from home, is the ability to still continue to try and have that routine and structure in place. And that works across our customers and our brand and operators who use our platform to their customers as well. So still trying to continue to have a routine as much as possible, certainly during this pandemic. Otherwise, to put it bluntly, you go mad.
And you're right. It's that again. I think again, technology can't save one of the most fragile things we will have upon us the next couple of months is our mental health. That's one thing technology definitely not can solve. It can probably help facilitate a lot of things. There's meditations, apps, and all that kind of things. But yeah, I think it's it's about taking care of ourselves and our loved ones. That's going to be very critical as we move forward, as you indicate.
Absolutely. I think we always took the decision at the beginning is, we're in this together. So how can we help operators? And because Australia, in fact, went into lockdown before we did, but came out of lockdown earlier, they developed a track and trace app to help with tracking cases in hospitality venues. So what we then did was take the decision to replicate that and launch that here in the UK as well, where we've received amazing feedback. So just before venues were allowed to reopen on the 4th of July, we released our free track and trace, again, just to help and give something back to the operators where the back's already up against the wall. They had no revenue being generated over the last 4 months. So they had to be compliant. It was a government policy that venues had to be compliant. Unfortunately, the government weren't in a place to release their own NHS app at the time. So us, as well as some other operators within the hospitality industry, released their track and trace app. So we gave it out to the whole industry, free of charge, no cost whatsoever. And we've had between 10 to 12,000 locations and venues use the platform, which has been amazing. And great response in terms of helping brands, and not just only had hospitality venues sign up for the track and trace. We've also had other industries, from retailers, from health services, hospitals, schools, colleges, institutions. So we certainly feel that not only we've helped the hospitality sector, which is, yes, where our focus has been over the last 12 to 18 months, but we've also had an impact, given the ability to help other businesses and had an impact on other sectors as well to help where we can, really, which has been fantastic, has been amazing, really, to be honest with you. And we'll continue to do that. And yes, the NHS have now, or the government have obviously announced and released their own NHS app recently. But brands are now using both in tandem with each other, in parallel with each other, purely the fact that you've got customers who may not be willing to download the NHS app or not using the app, but customers and operators still need to be compliant to track customer data. So that's where they will use our platform, for example. So we've tried to help and wanting to help operators and brands where we can over the last 6 months, and we'll certainly continue to do so as well.
How do you see, with all this going on, and we have this second lockdown where we will see how we will get through that. How long it's going to be, nobody knows. That's it seems like it's a bit longer than 4 weeks from how it's been communicated. There's a bit of a slip in communication, I think you can say easily there. And I think we all knew, if we really put our thinking hat on and thought as a scientist, it's probably not. And looked at Australia, as you said. I said to many people, just look at what happened in Melbourne in Australia, how long it took them to get out of the second lockdown.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think they were in for about 3 months, where it was initially anticipated to be 4 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And they're just coming out now, and they're still very slowly opening up. And I'm not trying to paint a dismal picture of what's going to happen, but it's definitely always worth to see what happens other places to get an idea about how long it can take. And don't believe you're out before you're out, in a way. But coming back to that, what kind of industry do you, from what you know today, and I know it's a bit like crystal ball question, what do you think the future looks from hospitality? You spend your whole life in it. How do you think it's going to look in 12 to 18 months? Who's going to be, you can be really brutal or say it another way. Well, how is the winners looking of this, and how is the people, the lost looking?
Sure, yeah, it's an interesting question, and I wish we all had crystal ball in terms of where we would be, in 12 or 18 months' time. One thing is for sure is that the hospitality sector, is extremely resilient, and yes, there will be some casualties, but there'll certainly be operators who are, in small, small size with small estates, who are a lot more agile and can move quite quickly. And what we've seen quite often, almost two camps really. I've seen one camp with operators who are small enough, and that might be anything from 0 to 10 or 15 sites, who are resilient, who are agile, who can move quite quickly, move to demands and consumers, and having the ability to implement the right tech within their businesses as well, and almost using this downtime to ensure that they've got everything in place. So when restrictions do start to ease off, they're in a place where they can shoot out the blocks very, very quickly. They're not left behind. So they're almost on the front foot and maximizing that time. And then you've got another camp where almost sitting, I wouldn't say sitting on the ropes, but almost, seeing how the industry and how the sector unravels over the next 3 or 4 months, really, which sometimes can be a little bit dangerous, really, because if it does start to ease up and restrictions start to ease off, they then have to start the planning stage, where really, to be honest with you, they should be doing that in this downtime period, or planning for the next quarter and for the next 6 to 12 months, to be honest with you. So I've certainly seen two camps from that perspective as well. I think certainly there'll be consolidation of estates, obviously closure of venues, but at the same time, I always think that in a world where there's lots of negativity and pessimism, there's also opportunities and also positive optimism as well. And I think certainly the smaller independents, the younger entrepreneurs who want to venture into the hospitality sector, is a great opportunity for them to create new innovative concepts, who are a lot more agile, who can also take advantage of, unfortunately, other businesses who've closed or collapsed, unfortunately. So I think, as well as businesses consolidating and closing, I think we'll certainly see a surge in new operators, new ways of dining. I think in-home experience and I think collaborations with third parties and brands will increase hugely. I think the fact that delivery will grow, we've got some brands, and one of my customers, Chicken and Blues, who've now converted one of their sites into almost a dark kitchen. Shake Shack have done the same thing where they've created dark kitchens across the UK, well, across England now. One I think they've recently opened in Brighton as well. So to reduce overhead, to still giving the ability for customers to have their favourite meal or to eat at their favourite brand as well. So I think we'll see a lot more delivery model dark kitchens as opposed to venues and brands taking larger brick and mortar sites as well. I think technology, yes, I think it will continue to grow. I think it will play a large part, and I think it will be extremely important that brands who have their existing customer base, that they harness that, they protect that, they make sure that they're communicating in the right way at the right time with the right messaging. I think will become a lot more important to ensure that they're engaging with their customers in the right way. And I think in terms of the customer experience, from whether it be online led or in venue, will become a lot more important. I think when me, even as a customer, want to make sure that we felt safe, we trust the brand. So brands will have to ensure that they're fully protecting their guests, and I think we do it pretty well anyway. I think hospitality, more than any other sector, do extremely well, and it just shows the latest cases, where only hospitality were like 2% accounted to the overall cases across England, to be honest. So that says it all, really. So I think we're pretty good at that anyway. But I think it is an interesting question. I wish I had a crystal ball, but I think the sector is resilient. There will be some casualties, but there will be a lot more new creative concepts, entrepreneurs that will almost come out of the woodwork, I think. And I think also there might be more of an emphasis on localization, so more regional suburb concepts. So almost, for example, London, bringing the West End or bringing the vibe of, certain eclectic regions in London, such as Shoreditch, for example, but bringing that out to the suburbs almost. So I think there'll be a lot more local, and I think customers are happy to support local operators as well, and potentially some brands where they might have wanted to have a presence in the city centre, they might look to start to regions which are a lot more affluent outside of Greater London or other cities across the UK. I think as well. I think it's not just one area where I think the food and drink business will evolve. I think there's lots of different facets to think about, really, from that perspective.
Yeah, and I think especially the one thing you said, I agree with most of the things you said, and I think it's really one that really is going to be important is this entrepreneurial part. If in entrepreneurial and assistant business where they reinvent themselves, but also there's an opportunity now. It's actually okay to trade from a hole in a wall again. You don't have to start with the whole big shebang. You can actually start either a dark kitchen, a food truck. It's much easier to take this journey now because you can actually, in a reasonable time, if you want a brick and mortar location, if that's right for that point or at that time and people going out again, it will be a totally different contract you're signing. And therefore it becomes a viable business. So I think that's one of the key things you say, that it's about being an entrepreneurial person now or company and get the best entrepreneurial skills out of you so you can really change the game while you're in this.
Absolutely, and I agree. I think the barriers to entry are probably a lot less. In terms of if you want to test out your new concept, there's so many different types of opportunities, from pop-ups to market halls, traders who are coming up all across the UK, and I think lots of other operators with large spaces will be looking to rent out spaces within their own venues as well to help out local traders and entrepreneurs as well. So I think for a testing ground is a great opportunity for new entrepreneurs. So I always believe that yes, we're in this world where we are at the moment, but there will certainly be some winners coming out of it. But they're the ones who can work quite quicker, being more strategic, being a lot more agile, resilience, almost like I said, previously, stay in their lane. So yes, they need to look at other ways to generate cash and other revenue streams, but still, at the heart of it, believe in their core values as a proposition, because that's what their consumers and that's what their audience are bought into. So it's how then do you start then filtering that out across different other facets of your business.
So in the end of the conversation, Dylan, we always ask the guests to give their top advice to leaders and people out there in the industry right now. And with the second lockdown, I don't know if this is the angle, but what is your top three advice in all this chaos?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Good question again, and in no particular order really. I think that the first one is value in your customers, value in your data. Data is cash, data is king. It's your data asset, it's your digital asset almost, to be honest. And I truly believe that operators should be protecting it and harnessing it and evolving that audience of theirs really. I believe going forward there'll be a stronger reliance on data and communicating a lot more effectively to develop a more of a one-to-one relationship with their audience, with their consumers really. So brands now who can take that time out to develop their audience, their communication strategy, almost invest in the recovery, I believe will be extremely important because the audience that you have are your best customers. They've engaged. How do you continuously engage with? Because, for example, as soon as these restrictions ease off in the first or second week in December, who are you going to rely on? Who are your loyal customers? Who are your advocates that you're hoping that will come back in again time after time to buy into your brand and continuously buy into your brand as well? So I think that's certainly one area I think that will certainly be crucial. I think also venues and brands need to be prepared to be versatile, and maximize revenue streams as well. I think the fact that, if they are or only have been a bricks and mortar site, how can they work in other different same sectors, but how can they start to divert into other revenue streams, whether it be online, delivery, prepaid. We've seen so many different other incremental revenue generating platforms that allow venues and brands to do that, just to ensure that they're top of mind to their audience as well. How do you essentially, sweat your asset if you've got a bricks and mortar site as well? So whether that be, office, get-togethers in the future, or whatever the case may be. But I think it's really, really important that venues and brands maximize their channels, their digital channels, and maximize their revenue streams to try and get, generate as much cash as possible. And I think that the last one, and it probably sounds a little bit of a cop-out really, but I think is be positive. I think, it's really easy to be caught up in the general kind of media about, where we are, where businesses, are traveling and trading. But I think the key core of the essence of being positive for me is extremely important, and purely the fact that there's no point worrying about what might happen, because it's not already happened. Try and focus on what you can control, in your current situation. Be positive. I know it's easier said than done, but me being a previous operator and own my own restaurant, it is hard. But you as an owner or as an entrepreneur, what you give off as your buy, will certainly transfer to the rest of your teams, to your consumers. What you put out there into the public, whether it be via press or social media. So even though it's hard to be positive, I think it's really important to try and be as positive for as many people as you can for your brand going into the next 3 months for sure.
Yeah, and it's a bit like, positive confronting this reality we're in, because that's, it's probably vital to success. I talk a lot about a book called Good to Great, one of my favorite books, and there's a chapter in there called the Stockton Paradox, and it comes from a guy that was actually captured in prisons in the Vietnam War. So he was in a prison camp. And he was very focusing on this. There has to be a balance between realism and optimism, but you need to be optimistic, and you need to stop putting timelines on when you're gonna be on the other side. And I think this is very important in this situation right now, that we don't say we're out this summer, because what happens to people in the prison camp that say they were out this summer on the other side, they died. Because they got so disappointed that they couldn't mentally keep themselves up. So this is about this conversation about there will be a way through. It will not be easy, and there'll be numbers of loops and waves we have to go through to get to the other side. But there is a way out, and if you keep that, I'm also a very big believer that the universe sometimes hand you cards you wouldn't have been given in your hand as well. And as human, we're drawn to positivity, aren't we? No matter what.
Correct. Yeah, I think it's extremely important to keep that. I think if you don't have that, you're already on the ropes. You're already on your back foot already. So you haven't got any chance to survive if you're not positive. So I think to have that attitude and that value, for yourself, for your brand, your staff, your customers, it's extremely important, really. And unfortunately, we've not, the cards that we've all been dealt are extremely unfortunate. And nothing in life is pretty straightforward. Sometimes you have to take a number of different diversions to get to where you want, and it might feel a little bit bleak, and it might feel the fact that you can't see light at the end of the tunnel. But everything can't last forever. Things change, and it's probably when you least expect it is when things start to happen. And I think somebody told me once is that literally at the point where you think you can't go any further, that's the tipping point where things start to change, and it's making sure that you can go the length and go through that journey with a positive mindset.
With that said, really good way to end this amazing conversation with you, Dhilon. I will send you all the power and energy that you and Sprout send needs to walk through this, and also to your customers and the people that is involved with your business to get on the other side whenever we reach that point.
Sure. I really appreciate that, Michael.
Take care. Thank you, Dhilon. Some great advice on how to communicate effectively with your customers, and great to hear there's hope for our beloved industry. If you want to get inspired more on how to build and connect with your customers, please check out episode 71 with Mark Smith, the founder of Double Up Social, on telling your story. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please give us a like, share, rate, or subscribe to one of our channels. Tune in next time for another interview. In the meantime, find out more about us and subscribe to our community, and download free leadership tools at hospitalitymavericks.com. And why not also join the Game Changer Facebook group if you want to be forefront of what progressive leaders are up to in hospitality right now. If you didn't get all of this, don't worry, there will be links in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and be Maverick.